Hi everyone, it's Ellen, and today I'm going to share with you the books that we read this month. So for those of you who may be new to my channel, I'm a homeschooling mom of an 8, 6, and a 4-year-old, and I often share videos on the curriculum that we're using, books that we're reading, and trips that we take each month. So one thing that I'm really excited about this month is this new bag that I purchased. I always love having a nice bag to take to the library, and this bag we got at the Starfield Library in Seoul. And I thought that this was just a cute little bag from the library. So this month I was able to read 3 books. It wasn't as much as I had planned, but they were part of some book clubs that I was a part of, and we had some really good discussions about them. So I liked that aspect of reading it, and I actually had someone to discuss them with. So for our homeschool group, we read The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie. And this was the first book that we started off with our homeschool book club, and we thought that this would be a really good book to read because it talks about reading and the importance of reading aloud to your children, and it gives some good tidbits on like where to read. You know, audiobooks do count, so don't discount those. It also talked about having discussions with your children about their reading. And we got some good ideas from it. So, you know, often I'll ask my oldest, my 8-year-old, you know, what did you read and how was it? And his response is, good, I liked it. And that's about it. So she gave some really helpful questions, and, you know, what kind of questions to pose, how to ask different questions to get more of a discussion out of it, because as moms, we don't always get to read every single book that they read, but we can still engage in dialogue and see what they learned and what they liked about the book. Overall, I thought she gave some great tips about reading aloud to your children. I also read Jim Trelease's Read Aloud Handbook a few years ago. They are basically talking about the same thing, but the tone is just a bit different. I feel like his was maybe a little bit more research-based. And hers was a little bit more comfy cozy on the couch type of read. But overall, I liked it. And there's also, just like in Jim Trelease's book, in the back there is recommendations for books to read with different age groups. So the second book I read this month was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I think that's how you say his name. So Paul was a 36-year-old neurosurgeon and was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And it's less than 0.01% of people who get that terminal diagnosis in their 30s. And this is a memoir, so he wrote the book. And it was a really good It was a good read, and it just made you really think about life and death. And there were just so many parts that, you know, I just kind of had to pause and, you know, really think. Like at one point he was like, oh, you know, why me getting this diagnosis? And then, but then also on the flip side said, why not me? You know, if it's not him, it is someone else. And, you know, when you take that and you really think about it, you know, when you, in kind of situations that you're in, you know, sometimes our initial reaction is, you know, why me? But if you think about why not me, you know, it's somebody else then. And the doctors, they're not giving him a time that he's going to live, but he knows that it'll be, you know, less than 10 years that he has to live. And not only does he grapple with having a child, but he also had these long-term plans of doing neurosurgery for, I think it was 20 years, and then being a writer for 20 years. And now all of that was taken away, and, you know, he only has a few years left. So he's trying to decide, you know, should he continue neurosurgery? Should he write? Should they have a child together? You know, he's having chemotherapy and taking different chemotherapy drugs. So, and then this one interesting part that his wife says is, she says, will having a newborn distract from the time we have together? Don't you think saying goodbye to your child will make your death more painful? And to which he responded, wouldn't it be great if it did? You know, and it's just parts like that, you know, really had you thinking, like, you know, what is the meaning of life? And, you know, are you living a fulfilling life? And what are you adding to your life that's making it fulfilling? And it was just a really good book. And I also felt that he was a wonderful writer. I think he was so interested in literature, and he's so well read that you know, you could tell in his writing. So I definitely do recommend this one. Next book I read this month was The Giver, and by Lewis Laurie. This book I think I've read probably 4 or 5 times. It was the first memorable book that I read in middle school. And I think like every maybe 5 or so years, I just reread it because I enjoyed it so much, and I just keep enjoying it again and again and again. And it is part of my favorite type of book. I like those dystopian type of books. Let's try to create this perfect society and show how it's not possible. And it's kind of just a classic for me, and just every few years I just reread it. The 4th book I read this month was Little Soldiers, An American Boy, a Chinese School, and the Global Race to Achieve. And this book was written by Lenora Chu. The reason I picked up this book was one, because I teach online for a school, for a company based in China, and I teach Chinese students. So I was interested in how they do education. And then the other side of it was in my quest to create not a perfect homeschool, but just provide my children with an education that is of quality. I like to study different education systems. So, you know, with the PISA scores, we have Finland and China that score at the top, that, you know, is always spread in the news. So I like to see what they do and what things that I like and what things I don't like, and find things that I can incorporate into our homeschool. In this book, I learned a lot about the Chinese education system. I will say that there's a lot I don't like, and there's some things that I do like. So just to give background on the author, she is a Chinese American. Her parents went to America when she was young. I think she was born in China. Went to America, and she went through the American school system, but with Chinese parents. They made sure that she was always doing well academically, in all the extra programs, in AP courses, and she had the pressure of performing well in school, but didn't have that school system. After growing up, she then married an American, and they moved to China. So parts of the book that I found really worrisome, bothersome, just kind of outrageous was like the way that they have their testing, and these students study for hours and hours, and they go to school all day. And I see it with some of my students when I teach online. They tell me they don't come home from school until 6 o'clock, and they have other tutoring services that they're a part of, and then they still have to study. And even when students are done with their school homework, their parents often give them more homework on top of the school homework. So they are overtaxed, both from the school system and the parent. So the PISA test scores really have, the interpretation of them really have changed since reading this book, because yes, they do score well on it, but it's Shanghai and Beijing that are scoring well on the test, because China as a whole isn't scoring so well on the test. You have many villages and just towns on the countryside, and they don't have the same access to education as those in Shanghai and China, or excuse me, in Beijing. Some of the parts of the Chinese education that I did take away that I did like is I do like, of course, that they have respect for teachers, and I don't mean unquestioning respect and just always doing as you're told no matter what. I just like the fact that, just like Finland, the Chinese system of education, their educators are as important as doctors. They're not paid well, neither are doctors in China, but just their importance level is high, just like in Finland. So I think that is something important to note. And also, their teachers specialize in subjects from day 1 of 1st grade. Day 1 of 1st grade, when you are learning math, you are learning math from a math educated teacher. You're learning English from the English educated teacher, and so on. After a second set of problems with my camera, I had to switch cameras, so I apologize if there's any kind of change in the quality of the video, but I have no other choice right now. I'm on a roll, and I want to finish recording this. And I find that in the Chinese education system, they have that quality instilled in the children, that it's through hard work and determination that they are able to achieve what they do. And it's not just like, oh, you know, it's just not for you. She talked a lot about that in the book too, how in America, you know, if you aren't doing well in math, you know, people are like, oh, well, I'm not good at math, so I don't really expect you to do well in math either. It's okay. Whereas, no, it's just you need to work harder. You know, you wouldn't tell the child, well, I can't read that well, so I don't expect you to be able to either, and that's okay. It's like, no, you need to practice, 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 and you will be able to perform better. She also highlighted the fact that in America we have such a strong importance placed on sports, and how when our students aren't doing well in sports, we tell them to work harder, practice more. But when it comes to academics, we just kind of let them know, like, oh, it's okay, you know, it's just not for you. That specific subject is hard, and, you know, it's okay. So I kind of liked that side of it. So I feel that she did a really good job showing the Chinese education, both the positives and negatives. I think there are many good things to take from that. I think children lose a sense of their childhood when they have to study that much. But some importance on academics, I feel, is good for students. Okay, and moving on to the read alouds for the month. You guys, I don't know what is going on with us, but we are still working on Harry Potter number 5. I don't know why we are just having so much trouble getting through this book. I think we keep interrupting it with other books, and that's why we haven't just focused on it. It's really my oldest, my 8-year-old, who really loves Harry Potter, so he and I will sit down and have a lot of reading time with that, but I also want to make sure that I'm reading other books that my 6 and my 4-year-old are interested in, and I think those kind of take away from us finishing Harry Potter, but I know we will finish it in December. We just ordered Harry Potter number 6 because our local library it's in and out with one copy. I ordered off thrift books and said, you know, for $4. That's an okay purchase for now, but we will finish it in December. I'm holding myself to that. So the other books that we read this month, we actually didn't read a chapter book aloud this month. So we read these 2. So Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, and we enjoyed this. We liked, well, I should say I liked the illustrations in it. My kids sometimes were like, why do they draw them like that? Or why do they use that kind of color? But each one has a story of the person, and then a picture and a memorable quote that they said. And I found myself, while the stories were inspiring and I loved it, I sometimes found myself, when I was talking to the kids, you know, I would say, like, what did they tell her? And they would respond, they told her no. And, you know, what did she do? She did it anyway. And it's like, yes, that's great. She made sure, even though she was told multiple times, she still made sure to follow through with her dream and her goal, and she got it done. And that's all great, but when mommy says no, I mean no, you know. So I kind of went back and forth on letting them know that, yes, you know, you have your goals, you have your dreams, follow them, don't let anyone stop you. And then it's like, but if mommy says get down and no, like, those goals and dreams, you gotta shut that down. So overall, we did like this book. I felt that they had a wide range of people, from old to young to, you know, centuries ago to present day. Some are dead, some are alive, and some of them we, you know, would watch like YouTube clips about them, or like Misty Copeland, we saw some of her ballet performances. There was one, I think from Iran, a rapper, so we watched one of her rap videos, and even my boys really liked it, so I thought it was a good read. The second book that we read this month was Out of the Box, a book of poems by Karma Wilson. And we really enjoyed this. My boys really looked forward to this. And it has poems, and then it has some illustrations throughout. And I just thought that the book was done really well, and like I said, we really liked it. I am just now, as an adult, getting into poetry. I was reading some articles by Pam Barnhill and I think Judy Bogart, I think that's her name, and it was talking about how to read poetry. And at first I didn't want to even read the articles because I thought it wasn't really interesting, but then I realized that part of the reason I haven't enjoyed poetry was because I never learned how to read it properly. So now that I'm getting a better understanding of how to read poetry, I'm able to read it aloud better. It makes more sense to me. My kids get it, and they love poetry. So I'm finding this new love for poetry and appreciation for it. So I'm looking forward to finding more books of poems for children and for adults. So if you have any suggestions on some books of poetry that you really love, please let me know in the comments down below. And lastly, I'll share with you what my 8-year-old has read this month. So this is his stack, and I feel like his stack was a stack of silly books, I guess, this month. He just was on a roll with kind of books that were, I'll read you the titles and then you'll understand what I'm saying. So Dogman and the Cat Kid. This one is more of a comic book. But it was full of laughs. I heard him laughing so much throughout this one. And I want to say that this is maybe the second one in this series. I'm not 100% sure. I know he's read other ones that have had Dogman on them. He read SMART. So the SMART stands for Science Maker and Real Technology Students and the Mars Mission Mayhem. So this is something that I just picked up from the library and thought that it might be an interesting read. And I think he read it in like an hour. So, and this one has a few pictures in there, but overall he thought that it was a great book. And I used the Sarah McKenzie book on how to have a better discussion about books, and he talked for like 45 minutes telling me all about this book. So I need to find out if there are more books in this series for him to read, because he really, really enjoyed this one and was able to talk to me a lot about it. This one is Sir Farts a Lot, Hunts the Booger. And this is what I was talking about, like kind of those silly books. And it's about a knight, and he farts a lot, and he has to like save this princess. And again, he really liked it and was constantly laughing in this book as well, and enjoyed that one. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm not really a fan of these books, but at this age, I really want him to have a love for reading. So if he picks something up and he reads it and he finds it interesting, I'm okay with it. He did have quite a few questions in here about school in general, since he's never been to school. And he was asking, like, why do people have to raise their hands to go to the bathroom? And what was another question he asked? Oh, he said, why every time I read a book about school lunches, it always says they're disgusting, you know? So then we ended up I found a few YouTube videos on like the school lunches around the world, and kind of compared them to American school lunches. And so we discussed like how the rest of the world eats their school lunches versus how we do, and then how we eat in our own home. So while not my favorite, it still did open up some opportunities for discussion, so I'm okay with it. And then last one he read was Captain Awesome to the Rescue. And this was his bathtub read. He picked up reading in the bathtub and really likes it. So he said, can I take a bath one night? And he sat down and read this book in one sitting. And he also really enjoyed this one. So those are all the books that we read this month. Have you read any of these? Which ones are your favorite if you have? And if not, what interesting books did you read in November? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.